that chain of event is what leads to, like, there's literally a saying, this sounds like an NTSB report, because there's all these little things that have stacked up, and now you put yourself into a corner. I didn't realize how much of a corner I was putting myself into because of just trying to get it done.
Hello, aviators. Welcome back to the Pro-Pilot Playbook podcast, where we bring you the hacks, the tips, the tricks to get you through your check ride, through all your flight training in the fastest and cheapest means possible. We've got a show today that would be interesting to anyone who is about to take their check ride, especially that first check ride, that private pilot check ride, when you don't know what you don't know. You have no idea what's happening going into it, and there's all kinds of anxiety. It's been some of our most popular episodes concerning the check ride. We had the FAA examiner on, and he was giving us some hacks and tricks to check ride. And today we've got someone who's this is another check ride story, one that went south here. Mike, you want to introduce our guest?
Sure. So we have a very special guest, and Brandon's a friend of ours, and he was actually he's enrolled in our live coaching program, and he was actually the very first student to enroll the first day that we launched it, and we became friends, and he's networking with all the other people involved, and we've been following his training. And he had this situation with his check ride a few weeks ago, and we really, really appreciate Brandon coming on, because this takes a lot of courage. You know, when you there's a setback like this, I think oftentimes pilots want to hold that in. They want to keep that private, not tell many people, kind of correct the problem and move on and not make it public. And I understand why people would want to do that, but by Brandon coming on and sharing his experience and being humble about it, I think it's really, really going to help a lot of aspiring pilots. And you're probably not going to find a lot of videos like this on YouTube. So, Brandon, welcome to the Pro-Pilot Playbook podcast.
Yeah. Appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, it's like full circle. Yeah, the first coaching student, and now you're on the show here. This is awesome.
Yeah, so tell us, Brandon, let the audience know a little bit about your background and how you got interested in flying, and kind of where you're at in your pursuit of your professional career right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Brandon Kendrick, born and raised in Gainesville, Florida, foundation of the Gator Nation. Always been interested in aviation ever since I was a kid, watching, the movies that as an 80s baby you're going to see, the Jetsons, Superman, Back to the Future, all these, just inspirations to
Top Gun, of course.
Oh, yeah. Of course, Top Gun. Yeah, of course. So just grew up in that time, and just always just had that in the back of my mind, wanting to be on the up in the clouds and not be on the ground. So long story short, I'm one of many from my family to play a sport for University of Florida. Was actually on the national championship team for the football team 2006 Florida Gators. So I have that under my belt. I'm also a skydiver, so I have a skydiving coach rating. I have over 100 and skydives. So yeah, like I said, I definitely love aviation and anything to do with just getting a little bit of air through your hair.
Yeah, you got a crotch rocket too, don't you?
Oh yeah, ZX-14 Kawasaki. So yeah, we like to have a little bit of fun.
Yeah, we were able to actually connect in person in South Florida, and he rolled in on that bike. I'm like, oh man, I like this guy.
Yes, sir. So as far as aviation, so my original goal was to actually be a fighter pilot. Was trying to go through the military to do that, and that just didn't pan out. I found out that the Marine Corps fitness and the University of Florida football fitness is two different things. One is, 4 to 6 seconds all you got, and the other is, we run for fun. So just a different type of, athleticism. So the military didn't pan out for me, and I honestly put down flying, the pursuit of being a pilot at that time, because after wanting to fly the jets, I didn't think that I would enjoy flying the big, slow, commercial, airlines. So that was a huge mistake. I had no idea, the earning opportunities for pilots. And at the end of the day, whether you're flying a F-16 or, a Cessna 172, you're up in the air. So, there's definitely more joy than I realized I would have. So, now I'm kind of shooting myself that I've put this off this long. Gotcha.
Great. Mm-hmm. Well, you pulled the trigger and you took action, and you're still working full time, I know, and give the audience an idea of what your training schedule's been like and how you've came about this. Yeah, so working full time is an understatement. I definitely work a lot more than the average the average person. So my educational background, I was originally studying engineering at the University of Florida, and with sports, it's really hard to keep up with the academics and the athletics. So I ended up not completing engineering at Florida. So I actually had to go back to school to do a second degree here in South Florida at FAU. So I finished my engineering degree there, and then now I'm in sales. So I'm making more money than I would have made probably if I would have went the engineering route, and learning from just that environment. And again, I put in a lot of hours, and so my journey for flying has definitely been a journey. It's literally been getting off at whatever time, 6 o'clock, running over to the airport, getting in just a little bit of time before it gets dark. Because of course, when you're PPL training, you have to fly in the daytime VFR for the most part. So yeah, just every little opportunity that I've had to fly, I've taken it. But, it definitely hasn't been as frequent as I would have liked. So, just it's definitely been a test of how bad do you want this? Because, most people, if they weren't able to progress as quickly as others, they would give up. So yeah, it's definitely been a grind.
Yeah, but you're training in Florida, which helps out because you got good weather. That's you do have that going for you.
Yeah, that's true. So of course, for some reason, it'll be great weather throughout the week though, and then usually my most available flying time is on the weekend. So of course, it'll be sunshine, not a cloud in the sky throughout the week, and then it's raining cats and dogs on Saturday and Sunday when I can really get after it. So it's a trip.
Yeah, there still is the thunderstorms issue.
Yeah.
Right. So about how long? So you started your private training, and then was it about a year before you were felt ready for the Private Pilot Checkride?
Well, so I mean, the minimum for your hours is 40 hours. I think I'm approaching 70 or so, which is basically average. But again, it's been all these challenges, like only being able to fly on the weekends for the most part, or, not having the same instructor the whole time because, 1 week we may have, a work event. And so I'm having to get up and fly with a different instructor. So it's just, it's on paper, I've had the hours, but again, just the sign offs, having to redo stuff just because of the inconsistency. So it's just, it hasn't just been a race to the minimums. It's been, being current, making sure that, you can still do that steep turn or that maneuver, and you haven't, been up there in a little while. So
Did you go like 2 weeks or more sometimes without flying with the weather and your schedule and stuff?
The longest it's probably been a month.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
So, I'll be hammering, and then whatever we have going on with work or the weather, that may ground me for, a couple weeks at a time. So,
gotcha.
The biggest gap I've had has been 30 days.
Well, then the next issue you had is once you realized, hey, I'm ready for this thing. let's find an examiner, let's book an examiner.
Yeah.
There's magically no examiners.
That's a problem
So
throughout the country.
you're scouring the state of Florida looking for somebody to give you a check ride.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
So
so
talk about how that happened.
Yeah, so that was just another thing was, again, my availability. If I have to be available all day, weekends are going to be ideal for me. But again, that weekend can't conflict with a work event. And then also you have the weather. So, well, you have the weather and then you also have that DPE schedule. So the combination of those things, it took me probably 5 months. So I had all the requirements to actually get signed off to do the check ride. But then it was, a number of months before I could actually get on the calendar with a DPE. And the only reason was because the flight school actually gave me a DPE at a different airport to train with, because the ones that they typically have coming into the school, one of them is, a airline captain, and another one is a chief pilot for some, corporate operation. So their schedules are probably as hectic as mine is. So
Right.
So this DPE, this check ride is going to be conducted at an airport you're not necessarily familiar with. The DP is your flight instructor does not know this DPE or all his moves, his questions, his little whatever digs he has. So you're going in blind to this thing already.
100%.
Yeah. All right. Go ahead. I'm interrupting.
No, you're good. So, and that's, again, as these things, the biggest thing that I can say for anyone that has had a situation where they haven't passed a check ride is it's not a scarlet letter. Like it is not something to be ashamed of. It's an opportunity to learn something from it and move forward and be a better pilot because of it. So again, like these are some of the things in the chain of events that led up to me having that outcome, but we'll get more into that. But what was your give me the question again, Sam?
I was just wanting wanted the viewer to understand the entire situation of what you were dealing with, less than ideal conditions. Typically your flight school, your flight instructor already has an examiner or two that they're kind of in cahoots with. So when they send a student to it, you already know, well, Bill's going to ask you this, make sure you got this ready. As soon as you start the ride, he's going to act like this is going to happen, but be ready for that. All this little stuff, you go into it with a little confidence because your instructor is giving you the gouge, but you are literally going in blind, and you're doing this you have to, from what I understand, you even had to get the flight school's airplane and take it to another airport to where you weren't even familiar with what. Yeah, I would say start the story there of just the craziness involved in trying to make this thing happen. It blows my mind.
Yeah. Okay. So, and before I get to that part, I just want to recap the things that I've done in my life to up until that point. So again, sports, right? So when you're an athlete, you're always taught, hey, you're gonna have adversity that you have to deal with. Keep pushing. Are you hurt or are you injured, right? So keep moving forward. Engineer, don't make mistakes. You got to be perfect. Strive for perfection. If you get something wrong, that's bad. That can affect other people, right? Sales, hey, you're definitely going to have setbacks and rejections there, but keep moving forward. Let's figure out a way to actually make this happen, right? So all these things, I'm not saying they're good or bad. They can definitely, in some situations, be assets. But in this case, and I'll go more into that, but in this case, they could actually potentially be a liability. And I didn't realize that going in. So I'll definitely circle back to that. But basically, fast forward to the check ride. The check ride, honestly, shouldn't have happened. Like as the PIC, should have not actually taken the check ride. Mm-hmm. And there was a number of reasons for that. So to get to where you were saying. So basically, long story short, I get a DP that's actually magically available for me. So I'm, like a kid in a candy store, just ready to get it over, even if I do have to, go into the situation blind, right? So we schedule the time. Then I have to, again, go into it blind because I don't know any other students that have ever, done a check ride with this guy. So I don't really know what to expect. So the best thing I can do is study. So, I literally have, I actually have them here. So I have, books after books. I got probably, 6 inches tall worth of books. I'm going to be doing instrument and commercial as well. But again, my educational background is engineering. So I'm approaching this as the best student that I can because I want to be successful. I want to have that outcome of, all right, you got your license to really actually learn to be a pilot now, right? So,
Right.
So I get scheduled. Number one, I have to go in blind, not knowing the DP. Secondly, I am flying to a new airport and a practice area that I haven't flown in before.
Mm-hmm.
I have to prepare all the paperwork for the DP to check, so all the maintenance logs and everything like that. So the airplane.
That's right. You were having trouble, the school, like rounding up the maintenance logs for the airplane, which is something
like the night before.
Yeah.
So I have the list if we want to just go down the list. But
real quick though, folks watching this, when you take a check ride, one of the things that has to be, everything has to be, all the I's need to be dotted, T's need to be crossed, and that examiner typically is going to want to see the maintenance, especially if it's an airplane they're unfamiliar with, especially if they're not always at that flight school. And they're doing it for 2 reasons. One, to actually, this is a chance to make sure everything's really legal. And 2, as a learning environment, a teaching, moment to the student. Basically you go through all the required documents that are supposed to be on the airplane. You're going to want to see maintenance logs to make sure the 100-hour inspections for flight instruction have been completed on the airplane. So all that stuff gets checked, and that stuff needs to be rounded up before your check ride to go to this unfamiliar place with an unfamiliar guy.
Yeah. So actually, guys, I actually do have the list prepared. So I think it'll actually be easier if I just kind of go down the list.
Okay.
So I just, after the check ride, this was kind of my debrief to myself. So I just kind of titled it, factors and stressors of the check ride. So number one, we already talked about flying being limited by work. So, that's obviously, the more you fly, the more you're going to be ready, right? Second thing I put down was lack of organization from my flight school. So when I scheduled this check ride, I had 2 weeks to get all this stuff prepared, all the maintenance logs and everything. And so, and not just the paperwork, but also the recency and being actually, recently trained or recently practiced, the maneuvers and everything. So during this last 2 weeks, I had 2 opportunities to fly. I didn't get a chance to do any of the practice maneuvers. So number one, I'm going in cold, not because it was a fault of my own, but the first opportunity I had to fly, my instructor forgot to put me on the schedule after I told him, hey, I want to fly at this time, this date. So I got bumped by another student because lack of organization on their part. So that was strike one. Second opportunity to fly, we were going to do all the practice maneuvers and fly to this other airport so that he could actually sign me off to fly myself there since he was going to be training other students. So my instructor was late to that lesson. So all we had time to do was actually go to the other airport and back. So again, there were my 2 like warm up opportunities gone. So I literally went into it, cold. Next thing was going back to where you left off, Sean, with the maintenance stuff. So for some reason out of the blue, I wasn't aware of this, but the flight school started sharing the plane. I don't know if it's with another flight school at another airport, but basically that plane was stationed at another nearby airport. So on top of trying to get all the maintenance stuff, which they had at my airport, the plane wasn't there, right? So I'm like, are they actually going to get, because this flight school can say one thing and do another. So
Right.
a stressor is, are they even going to get this plane to me so that I can practice and actually have it ready for, the check ride?
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was the next thing. They waited until the night before. So of course they're like, oh, this is everything that you need paperwork wise. This is all the maintenance records. And then the night before they said, oh, well, there's some extra stuff we actually are going to send you with to give to the DPE. And I got off work at 6:00. I got to the airport at 6:30. I didn't leave the airport with that stuff in hand until 10:00. So
the night before the check ride.
correct.
Wow.
Correct. So
That's
basically, and the reason I'm saying, going back to, I should have called the check ride, I didn't pass the I'm safe checklist because of all these little things that were building up, but I didn't realize it afterwards. So
you're still dinking around at the airport at 10:00 at night, the night before. What time's the check ride? What time you got the next morning?
So I have to be at the airport for the check ride at 7, which means that I have to leave my house because I'm also 45 minutes away from the first airport, right? So
Yeah.
I'm not rested. I get probably, 5-6 hours of sleep, if that. Yeah, actually, I think it was less. I'm irritated because I've asked the school 2 weeks ago to give me all this stuff so that I'm not in this situation that I'm in right now.
And here you are at the 11th hour. Yeah.
Exactly. I missed. I had a. Go ahead, Sean.
I was just going to say, we left out a whole nother factor that was, you were talking to us about that entire week was the forecast and the weather.
Yeah, I'm getting it. It's on the list. It's on the list. So yeah, so then I had one of my bosses that has really looked out for me. She was actually leaving, so they also had like a going away thing for her. I missed that because of this foolishness with the last minute paperwork. So now I'm not just stressing over, okay, like let me get this stuff so I can go home and go to sleep. It's also, man, I'm missing out on my girl's thing, and so that's a bummer. So then there was they were going to send me, so they weren't going to send me with my instructor. They were going to send me with a commercial student, right? So he could fly me, and I would just have to just ride along. So they switched this guy on me. So at 11 o'clock that same night, they tell me, oh, well, he's not going to be able to go with you anymore. So we're going to send you with this other guy. And I'm like, okay. So again, just all this stuff is just stacking up, right? So going back to where you were going, Sean. So the other thing is the week of, going back to that lovely weather, the week of the check ride, I'm looking at the weather and I'm like, there is no way that we're going to end up doing this check ride, because my personal minimums up until that point were 10, like crosswinds.
On the wind, yeah.
So
10 knots
the
crosswind.
winds, correct. So the winds were forecast. I literally stopped studying for 2 days that week because the winds were forecasted to be like 17, gusting 25.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking that the DPE is going to cancel it. And he tells me, oh, well, we'll wait until the night before. Sometimes the weather isn't as bad, as it's forecasted,
Right.
way out. So we'll wait and see what happens. But
Right, you communicated with the DPE a couple days prior saying you were
Yeah.
uncomfortable with the wind, and then he
Correct.
encouraged you to just wait till the last minute. And
Which I remember we were on board with that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, again, it's not up to the DPE.
You're right.
It's up to the PIC.
Right.
So
Sure.
as the PIC, if you're not comfortable, so basically where I messed up is I said to myself, well, if DPE is comfortable, I know they're going to save my butt if push comes to shove. Like I'm not worried about being in danger, but could I perform in that situation when I've never been in winds that high? So
Gotcha.
the right thing to do would have been for me to actually tell him, hey, I'm actually not comfortable flying in that scenario.
Right.
So let's reschedule. But I didn't do that.
Right.
So it's
that's
the
my fault.
morning of. It's the morning of.
Yeah.
And how did the weather? I know you're about to get to the story where you're driving to the airport and then you start getting messages from this dude. But
This is like at 5 a.m.
the guy who's supposed to be riding with you. But what was the weather that day when you woke up? What was it doing?
It was doing what we thought. It was very high winds for me. It was the same forecast. It didn't change.
Gusting 20 some knots. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it was going to get progressively worse. So basically,
Gotcha.
the thought was, okay, we'll get the oral part knocked out, and then we'll basically try to get up there before it gets too.
Yeah.
So I went with that.
Typical, right? The winds pick up during the day with So when you woke up at 5 a.m., it probably wasn't bad, but it was forecast to get worse, and
correct.
And the examiner was just trying to get it done.
At least half of it. At least get the oral done so you can come back and fly another day. Gotcha.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I wake up. I've overslept a little bit, not a lot. But again, I had like 4 hours of sleep. So I overslept by a little bit. I got up, but I'm already, literally as soon as I get up, I'm already feeling rushed. Right. So then I'm driving to the airport. It's 5 a.m. I'm planning on leaving at 6 so that we can get to the airport early so that I'm not showing up to my check ride on time, because if you're on time, you're late in check ride world, from what I've been told, right? So I'm 30 minutes away from the airport. So this new guy that they just switched over on me at the last second to start with calls me to say, hey, I was on my way to the airport, but my car just broke down.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, are you freaking serious right now? So then he's like, okay, so I'm gonna try to get a hold of the owner to see if the owner of the flight school, to see if there's somebody else, that can go with you.
At 5 in the morning, sure.
Exactly.
At 5 in the morning, there'll be somebody available, no problem.
Yeah, good luck with that. So then I'm like, okay, now am I gonna have to fly myself to this check ride? And again, I know going it may be okay, but coming back, I already know what time it is. Like it's about to be squirrely coming back. So that's another stressor is, okay, is it like, am I going to have to take the reins, now, right? So he calls me back. He doesn't get a hold of anybody, of course. So then he's like, well, if you don't mind, if you can come and meet me, we can push my car into a parking lot. I'll deal with it after I get back, and then we'll go to the airport. So I'm like, okay, at this point, I might as well. Yeah, I know. So
morning your check ride, you're helping somebody push their car down the road is crazy.
Thank you. And this isn't a car. This is a Jeep. So I mean, thankfully, I'm a former football player, but I wasn't expecting to, be pushing the sled the morning of my check ride. So
and of course, it's South Florida, so you're probably sweating to death at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Thank you. So number one, I'm sleep deprived. I'm not rested. Number two, I'm irritated because, again, all the stuff leading up to that, now it's just stuff is just stacking up on top of each other, right? So then we take off or whatever, and this guy, this was the hilarious part. I didn't find out until after that this was actually, because the original guy was a commercial pilot. The guy that they sent me with was a private pilot, and he seemed more nervous than I did. So I was literally like, again, because I mean, it wasn't as bad as it was forecasted to be, but it was still higher than I had flown in, and he just seemed just like super nervous. We're flying and just everything. Like I'm looking at my flight and I'm like, why is he taking this route when I have this route, which is shorter? We're trying to get there on time. We're already pushing being there, like right when the guy wants me to be there. We get to the airport. Of course, it's a left-hand traffic pattern, and we're in a left base. And I'm just sitting like he's talking to other pilots in the pattern. And I'm just thinking to myself, okay, we're in a left base for this runway. Are we not going to slow down? Are we not going to, put down our flaps and actually prepare to land? He literally flies past the airport. I'm like, oh my gosh, like what is that?
Brandon, this guy is the perfect example of what I call when I got a co-pilot that does nothing but make my job harder and make me have to watch after him more or screws my shit up constantly. I call him a -1. He's not a +1 in the cockpit. He's a -1. Dude can't even fly the airplane, which is what he was supposed to be there for in the first place. But then he shows up with a busted car. -1.
And again, like I'm not even. I don't want this to come off like I'm like not
this poor
grateful
guy's
for this
watching
guy.
this right now.
I'm again. I'm like I felt bad because I'm like, man, like this guy, like his car probably would have had that, but because of me, it happened. When it happened, I don't know, like.
And he's trying to help you out. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm like, I feel terrible that this happened, and but then it's just again, just the chain of events, right? So then to land instead of going around in the left direction because of course it's a left hand pattern. He then goes against the flow of traffic to do a right pattern. And I'm like, we just need to get on the ground right now.
Yeah.
So now I've actually arrived at the check ride. So the oral, we do the oral.
You were on time?
Actually goes, I beat the DPE there and I was on time. So all was well. Good. But again, like I'm literally, and of course I'm riding in the right seat and I'm literally, I'm literally debating if I need to land this plane from the right seat. Because again, this guy is so nervous, like he's literally like borderline freaking out. And I'm just like, I have to ride back with this guy.
Yeah.
And it's gonna get it's gonna be worse when we go back. So again, like
You're like, well,
I'm already like I'm like, if I pass this check ride, you ride in that right seat, buddy. I'm taking this back. You were clearly not in the right frame of mind right now. So anyway, so I get to the check ride. Actually, the last part was funny too. So of course, because we add that time to then have to do basically a go around. Now the sun's actually coming up, so we're going in to land. And he can't see the runway. So like it's literally we're landing eastbound and he can't see the runway. So now I'm like fishing my sunglasses out of my backpack in the back seat so that he can actually so that I can help him actually see the runway for us to land on. So I'm super happy to be on the ground to say the least, right? So anyway, so the check ride actually starts. The oral starts. And so the oral actually goes well. Like I put in the time, energy, and effort to know my stuff. But that was also a really good learning opportunity as well because even though I knew certain things, like let's say if he asked me, you're flying to this airport, what is the cloud clearance requirement? It's a class Bravo. Okay, so good. You know the requirements, but would you actually, if this is your first time flying to that airport, would you fly under those conditions, or would you need more wiggle room as far as your tolerances? So just like thinking about stuff like that, like you're learning all the book stuff and memorizing all this stuff, but putting it in those real world situations was really cool, during the oral. So that part went well. Obviously, I passed that, and then we, proceeded to actually go out to the flight portion.
So did your instructor give you anything going in? Like how much one-on-one did you get with your instructor before this check ride? Like, did he give you any tips or make sure you got this with you or anything like that?
The best that he could, but again, the better thing would have been for me to have because basically when he signed me off, like we did all this stuff, right? Like we went through all the practice maneuvers and I did everything, satisfactorily for him, but it was just the amount of time that had passed, because he had signed me off like right around 60 days before that. And so my intention was, let's get the check ride scheduled, because if I don't have a date, I'm just going to be burning, time and wasting money if I'm not going to be on anybody's schedule for the next, couple months, right? So
Totally.
basically the idea was get the date locked down, and then those 2 weeks or whatever, however long you have, then rack up, the practice time to be current.
Right.
I'm sorry, to be persistent. I can't even talk. Proficient.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, okay, so here you are now. You're done with the oral. You for everything prior to the oral was a disaster, but you made it there on time. You did a good oral, so you probably have somewhat confidence. You've met the guy. You know he's not a monster, so you're comfortable with him. But now you're walking out. What is the weather doing, and what is your anxiety level now as you're walking out to the plane?
So before I walk out to the plane, because of course, from me being a skydiver, my wife is like, okay, whenever you take off, let me know you're taking off and let me know when you're landing, so I know that you're good. So as we're literally walking out to the airplane, I open my phone so I can do that, and I actually see that a family friend of mine has actually passed away. So like everything else on top of that, I'm just like, Jesus Christ. So again, not that like derailed me, but again, that's just going back to that I'm safe checklist. I'm already, fatigued. I'm already stressed out. I'm already, I'm already angry, like all these different emotions. And then now it's like, that was like the last thing on the E category for that, right?
Well, when you watch these action investigation movies, shows, whatever, Seconds from Disaster, whatever, all those, when something bad happens like that, and an accident happens, it's never one thing. It's this layer cake of all these little things that went in to make this thing happen the way it did.
Which is why I keep going back to, as the PIC. So the thing about the check ride is, the check ride, your DPE is going to intentionally give you some type of artificial stressors, right? But the thing is, and again, it wasn't until afterwards that I really got a chance to think about this. But when okay, this stressor is there, like you're flying this person to this wedding. You got off work at 6 o'clock. You maybe haven't flown a ton at night, but you can get there before it gets dark. If you take off right at that time and it's an hour and a half flight, you got 2 hours before it gets dark. But you're flying into a Class Bravo airport. You got a TFR, not too far away. So the purpose of the DPE is to give you those artificial stressors, but that going in, I'm going to get this made up stressful situation. But all this time, and that's why I keep going back to being an athlete and being in sales and, just getting to this point in my life where like I've had these challenges and I've persisted.
Right.
I knew the artificial stressors were there, but the actual stressors that I was dealing with, I didn't realize how much they had actually stacked up. Like it was literally almost like they weren't even there. Like it was like I knew that they had happened, but again, I'm persevering and I'm like, hey, whatever it takes, we're here. We're gonna make this thing happen, right? So it was almost as if I discarded those things, but they were still there.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's that. I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just pressed on, and you used determination to overcome all of those. But there's only so much you can do. I mean, if you receive bad news like that, and you're also anxious about all this weather and stuff, you can press on and
still sweaty from pushing a Jeep.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. So,
So what's the weather doing at this point?
before we get to the weather, we got to
Okay.
crank the plane up first. So
Okay.
then I go to I go to crank up the plane. So again, this is the first time I've ever actually sat in the right seat, right? So there's a little label there that
You mean
talks
on the
about
left?
when you're
Left
You mean
seat.
the left seat. Right.
First time you've sat in the left seat of
I'm
this.
sorry.
Right.
No. I've sat in the left seat, the PIC seat. I've never sat in the instructor seat on the right.
Okay.
Oh, you're talking about still going to the airport, cranking the airplane.
No. I'm saying yes. Me riding to that airport was the first time I had ever even sat in the right seat.
Okay,
But
gotcha.
there's a label on not the dash, but there's a label on like the firewall that talks about starting procedures. So we go to crank the plane up, and the plane doesn't start.
Oh boy.
So now I'm sitting here trying to start the airplane, but I've seen, okay, don't try to start, like basically don't try to start it for more than 10 seconds consecutively.
Okay.
Because I hadn't sat in that right seat, I've never seen the fine print to say, don't try it more than X number of times. Also, like basically if it doesn't start, and let's say it was 7 times. If it doesn't start because it's a high energy starter or whatever,
Sure.
the instructions
Starter
were
limitation.
exactly. So the DPE doesn't tell me that until afterwards. He's like, you know that you're actually not supposed to, if the plane is giving you trouble starting, the instructions that are on that dashboard say don't do what you did, because that can actually start an engine fire.
Yeah.
So I had no clue about that. But so literally on top of everything else that's happened, now I'm trying to fire up the airplane won't start. It literally takes me probably 8 times to actually get it fired up.
Wow.
So So then, Mike, what was the question after you were talking about the
So
flight,
you've never flown this plane before?
No, I have, but it's
Okay.
it's
Just
temperamental.
one of those things. Gotcha.
Yeah, you gotta have that magic touch.
It's just another layer in this gorgeous day.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. So we get it fired up eventually after me trying it a million times. And then, we head out. We head out. And I swear to God, I felt like I was in one of those, I guess they just call them stalls, ST, what is it, short takeoff?
Oh, short field
Whatever.
takeoff landing. Yeah.
Yeah, like when you see like the bush planes. Yeah. But when he said, all right, we're gonna do a soft field takeoff. When I tell you, like my ground roll, I feel like it was less than 100 feet.
Because the wind.
Because it's so windy.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, this is not good.
This is going to be interesting. Yeah.
So it's literally like,
especially when it's gusty, because you may have got off the ground at 100 feet, but when somebody flips that gust switch off, you come crashing right back down.
Yeah, I felt that. So I take off, and like literally I'm muscling, like I'm literally muscling this plane. Like there is no, like there was very few times where I felt like it was straight and level. Like it was another physical exercise flying that plane.
Man.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
So basically, not long into the flight, we basically discontinued because what did he ask me? Oh, he asked me what was the time that we were actually going to go to the next, like what time were we going to arrive at our next checkpoint, basically.
Yeah, so for those, usually on your private pilot check ride, just to give viewers here, typically on that check ride, there's a few different check rides this happens, but you'll take off as if you're departing on a cross country. So you show up at the check ride with a cross country planned out. You have the whole thing planned out, and you'll start flying to that first point or something, and the examiner may quiz you on a couple items, like, well, how much gas are we supposed to burn by the time we reach this point, or how long is it going to take us to get to the next point? And then he'll say, all right, that's good. Let's go off and do steep turns now. Whatever. That's typically the way it goes on these things. But so that's what you're on your way to your first point, and he starts quizzing you.
Yep. And so I basically, because with an instructor, if I had ever done that, it had been a long time. And again, with my flying schedule, I had flown with different instructors, right? So I've had two, maybe even three, like primary instructors this whole time. And so I know that I've done it for like prepping for the written test, but in like while I'm doing a flight, I haven't calculated that like en route. So I didn't know how to answer that. So he was like, well, if you don't know how to calculate that on the way, it's not safe for us to go, because if we're off, like you don't know how much fuel you're off. So we may not land with the right amount of, gas that we need to be safe. So he basically asked me at that point if I wanted to continue or not. And I was like, hey, yeah, let's, we're up here. Let's, let's keep
Let's
going.
go.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, again, I have another out, there's no,
Yeah.
it's not going to get any better, but I'm like, hey, let's, while I'm up here, let me just have you take me through
That's their textbook
yeah.
word they use in a check ride. Once you're cooked, they'll say,
Yeah.
okay, that was unsatisfactory. Would you
Yeah.
like to continue? That's the language they use.
Yeah. And I'm glad that I continued, because I learned some other stuff. So, for really the biggest thing I learned was when we did the engine out, right? So again, new airport, new area. So as a skydiver, when you're landing off somewhere and you're looking for that best place to land, number one, you're at the mercy of the winds. You don't have an engine, right? So you're in a skydiving scenario, you're more likely to say best spot to land. But I had been taught best place to land when I'm going through the ABCs of, the emergency landing. So what ended up happening, and why I didn't complete that satisfactory, was I basically overshot my landing area. But up until that point, anytime I did any type of practice, emergency engine outs at my primary training place, we're in the Everglades. So if you find a road, it's probably going to be next to some canal that's going to run from, Naples to, our side on the east side. So
Yeah.
you're not going to run out of road. So had I stopped the check ride, I wouldn't have learned that. Like, don't ever do that again. Don't look at, best place to land. I got a whole field out there. I can just land wherever, because what if you're in a place where, let's say, is densely populated, and okay, well, I got this much runway or this much road because I got trees or I got power lines or something. So I literally have to put it down on that specific stretch. But I had never thought about that.
Yeah.
He wanted you to fly the airplane and get it in a position to where there was no doubt you were going to put it down in this tiny little spot. Is that what you're saying? Instead of just
no. So yeah. Well, what I'm
over there.
Yeah.
He
So
wanted
what I'm yeah. So he didn't. What I'm saying is, he didn't care where I landed. He just said, "Hey, your engine's out. What are you going to do?" So what I'm saying is, with the stress of the winds, I'm already not comfortable. Also, this is the one of the few times that I've actually had my my iPad actually mounted to the yoke, because normally when I go through my checklist, I actually have my paper checklist. So now I'm literally fumbling with my checklist, and again, going back to engineering, I know I'm being tested, so I'm trying to make sure I go through the whole checklist. So I actually end up spending more time on the checklist, because I'm trying to make sure I hit everything. I didn't forget something, because I'm subconsciously worried about, if I forget to squawk 700, he's going to say, well, you didn't complete your checklist, right? So again, I'm fumbling with all that. And so because I wasn't looking outside, checking the checklist, looking outside, I got stuck on the checklist, right? So that's what I'm saying. Before, that wasn't a problem, because I had virtually an endless runway. But where I was on that check ride, I overshot, and that was a problem, because I literally ran out of road. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Right, right.
So, and then another thing is I always use my checklist on my iPad. So why I would even grab the physical iPad when the physical checklist when I can literally just hit on my iPad.
It was just that
to
kind of day, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, yeah. So, again, all these little things, they make a difference. So, for me to be like, oh, gosh, you failed and, like you're a terrible pilot. No, I'm not. Like, I'm not. And that's the thing, too, that you learn about, like, the hazardous attitudes, right? Like, oh, you're too cocky, you're macho, you're, anti-authority, all this stuff. And that's what was so eye-opening for me was I'm not super cocky. Like, I'm literally, like, in my free time, like, if I was actively skydiving, like when I get the skydiving magazines, the parachutist magazines, I'm looking at the incident reports. I'm listening to NTSB reports when I'm taking a break from studying because I want to learn how not to end up in that situation that they got into. But again, that chain of events is what leads to, like, there's literally a saying, this sounds like an NTSB report because there's all these little things that have stacked up and now you put yourself into a corner. And I didn't realize how much of a corner I was putting myself into because of just trying to get it done.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yes. So
nothing to be ashamed about. Like, it's learn from it. Like that, like this is had I passed that check ride, it really would have been a disservice to my friends and my family that would have rolled with me later because again I could have put them in a bad spot because of not having that awareness of, hey, you got a mountain of stuff in front of you that you don't have to climb that mountain. Like you can walk away and come back tomorrow and that mountain won't be what it is today.
I don't know, Brandon. When you first told me this story on the phone, that's why we wanted to get you on here because I was listening to this whole thing you just rattled off over the phone that night or the next day after it happened or whatever. I'm like, holy crap, people got to hear this. And the fact that you're taking it so cool and chalking it up as a learning, because it really was a good learning situation here because you get to see all those little identifiers. Now you can see this trouble coming at you next time. It's leaving clear indicators.
Yeah. Well, you know what it did, Brandon? It's not really a reflection of you as a pilot, and a lot of these failures aren't. It's a reflection of some deficiencies that were in your training. Because the things that you messed up were really things you weren't shown correctly or weren't repeatedly shown. You should never be on a check ride and then something they ask you to do, it's the first time you've ever really dealt with.
Yeah, exactly. I said the same thing to him. Yeah, there's the training deficiencies, clear, blatant training deficiencies, and then just the operation, the logistical operations around making this check ride happen should have not been going down that way. You should not have been at the airport at 10 p.m. the night before you got to get up at whatever it was, 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, but one thing even with that, in this world of being a pilot, because again, like I showed you this, like imagine if I didn't have all this, right? Like imagine if I wasn't true, and my mom was a teacher, right? So like I'm approaching this as a student. Like this is something that I've always had a love for, always been fascinated with. So what I'm saying is, imagine if I didn't have that like burning desire to actually learn this stuff, right? So even if, because you're going to have viewers that, they may be in a situation like mine where, you're not getting the best training, but you have to take responsibility for the training that you're getting, right? So if you're receiving that lower level of training and you don't do anything about it, that's your fault. right?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, when it's you up there and it's you in that plane and it's you by yourself or you with your friends or family, they're going to suffer the consequences of how well you've prepared yourself. So no matter how well your school or your teacher does on instructing you, if you get a great instructor, great. But you should always have that intention of I'm going to be like I'm going to master this. You know, a lot of especially if you're not going to go and be a professional, paid pilot. Like a lot of people look at this as, oh, this is a hobby. You know, this is something fun to do. Like this is life or death. So if you don't approach it like that, you're going to put yourself and others at risk.
That's great advice. Excellent advice. That is really good. There's a lot of really good things that you brought up in this video. I mean, one of the things, and Sean likes to touch on this too, is managing the situation and all those things going on is a huge part of flying. I mean, it is. You're a manager. You're a manager of your external environment. You're a manager of your internal emotions. All those factors you're weighing out every day. And also, check rides are part, you're going to do really well as a professional pilot because check rides are part of the business and nobody likes them. It's just something you have to do. It's just the way it is, right? And we're always taking them and they don't get any easier. I mean, they make it easier because you have more experience in the plane and you're doing all this, but the stakes get higher. Because now you're flying multi-million-dollar jets. These simulators are super expensive to rent. You may
failure could mean your employment.
Yes, it could mean your employment, heaven forbid. If not, it's going to be embarrassing and cost your employer a lot of money. A lot of times these training events, you have trips stacked right after that. So if you need to be retrained or something, it's going to screw up the company's schedule. And these stories happen in professional aviation too. Like, you're flying into a city to run the simulator the next morning and, you just came off a trip and then, there's snow and your flight's delayed. And then maybe now you're getting up at 5 a.m. to take a flight to go right to get into the sim, and you're constantly having to weigh these out. And it is a huge mental game also. And actually your ability after all of that, everything that happened to get you there, and then he gives you that shocking news, basically. And I got to say, it probably was a little shocking because you weren't even really prepared for the question and all that. And you've just started flying. It has nothing to do with the winds, which is what you were worried about. And he says, okay, this check ride's unsatisfactory. But you had probably from, like you said, sports and you had the mental toughness to tell him, no, I would like to continue, And honestly, that makes the recheck so much better because now you've knocked out, a bunch of other items that you've checked on the boxes. You can really focus on, the areas that you need. A lot of people wouldn't have done that. They would have been, no, just take me back to the airport. This day has gone terrible. Just take me back. So very good on that.
Won't do you no good. It's going to be the same result whether you land now or you go through a couple more maneuvers.
Yeah, totally. Awesome.
Yes. Yep. I truly believe this video is going to help people, especially just like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, going into this thing on your private, not knowing what to expect. That's the biggest anxiety ever. Mike, you said the check rides don't get easier, but what they do get is routine. Sure, the pressure's still there, but our check rides we do in the simulator every time. It's the same exact thing. You're going to take off, you're going to lose an engine on takeoff. You're going to fly around single engine, come around and do a single engine ILS, usually hand flown, whatever. It's the same thing over and over and over.
They typically tell you the approaches you're going to do, the airports you're going to land at, every single thing you've done over and over again. There's nothing like what happened to you where you show up and then the examiner gives you this crazy plan of action. Like, I know you've been training in New York, but we're going to be in Honolulu today, and then we're going to fly, and I'm going to, you know, there's none of that, you know, because it's so high stakes. You know, they don't want anybody saying, "Oh, you failed," and well, I failed because this guy was freestyling, and you know, he did something, and you know, everything has to be very, very cut and dry, you know, so. This is really good. I mean, and you know, it takes. I can't say this enough. It takes a lot of courage for you to be humble enough to, you know, share this on the internet. What happened to you?
I like what you said, Mike. That you're not going to see a lot of videos like this on the internet, if any. People are, you know, this is. I don't know. Thank you, Brandon.
For
coming on.
Hey, man, that's what the Pro Pilot podcast is all about. It's about becoming a pro.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Well, good luck to you. Do you have the recheck scheduled already, or are you still working on it?
I'm actually going to be doing some simulator time for the first time this afternoon. So I got that in about 2 hours and change. So we did go and do the but really the biggest thing I was worried about was steep turns because, you know, it's only been a couple times where I feel like I've really like done those super, super well. So the last time I flew with my instructor, like last week, I'm literally like, this is the majority of what we're doing is steep turns because I'm not going to go back to this check ride and have this like, all right, here we go. Let's see how these steep. literally going into the check ride with all that stuff, with all those other factors. I literally said to myself, if I can do these steep turns, I'm gonna pass this check ride because that's literally the only thing that I'm really worried about. But so I will definitely, hopefully, have that scheduled in the next couple weeks. I've been in communication with the DP. I told him, hey, I'd like to retake with you. You know, I appreciate, you know, the feedback you gave me. The guys, I think he's actually in the military as well. So you know, like he's, you know, like I like that he was like, look, you know, I'm giving you this feedback because, you know, again, I want you to be a safe pilot, and this isn't about, you know, me, you know, like this isn't anything personal. This is, I want you to get better so that, you know, if I send you out into the world with your wings, I'm not going to be concerned that, you know, I'm going to read about you on some, you know, some accident report. So, so I definitely want to go back with him. But I guess in closing, what I'll say is, again, you know, thankfully I've been blessed to have just these coaches and mentors and successful people in my life that have given me this mindset. But again, if this happens to you, like don't be ashamed of it. Like sometimes you learn more from losing. Of course, we all want to win, but sometimes it's what you learn from not having success, which ultimately makes you more successful in the future. And there's a saying by Les Brown. He says, you can't see the picture when you're in the frame. So always
I love Les Brown.
So I've actually done some speaker training with them as well.
You show me somebody that's successful, you're going to find that, you know, I'll show you the same person who's failed a whole bunch of times before they got that success.
Totally.
Yeah. Awesome. So while you're practicing and getting these, you know, these ratings, like that's the time to practice, especially when you have, you know, somebody more experienced sitting next to you, whether it be a DPE or your flight instructor. But, you know, don't be afraid to fail fast, but fail in those situations where you're going to have an opportunity to learn. So that way, when you're really, you know, when you're in those situations, you can perform the way that you need to have the outcome that you want.
Totally. Awesome, Brandon. Well, thanks for being on. I think, Sean, we're going to have him on again to give the audience a recap once he gets all his ratings. Right. And then we'll put a picture of you on our website when you're standing next to your shiny jet that you're flying, because I know you're going to be on your way. Yeah. Awesome. So best of luck to you, Brandon.
Thanks for tuning in. If you guys, make sure you like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. If you got a question for us you'd like us to answer, you can email us at podcast@Pro-Pilot Playbook. And thanks for tuning in.
Can I say one last thing?
Sure.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, I gotta plug you guys. So again, I was the first person that joined their coaching program because again, if you can't tell already, I'm a student. And for what these guys are doing, showing you what's possible, the connections that, we're making, the dialogues that we're having on these coaching calls for what these guys are charging, like these they don't have to do this. And the fact that they are doing it and the fact that they are going out and, getting these different speakers to pour into their community of people that are trying to turn this passion into a profession, it's no money. You need to sign up for the coaching program. You need to sign up for anything that you see that they're offering that.
Oh man,
Brandon!
That's fine. I'm going to put this at the beginning of the video, though.
Pull the credit card out, run it, bang it, and it's going to be way more valuable than the money you spend. And again, I'm in sales. I've done millions and millions of dollars in sales in my career. They should be, and of course, I'm the first one, so I'm grandfathered in. They could charge you a lot more than they're charging you for this program. And it would be worth every cent.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Yeah, that's the first thing you told us. You guys aren't charging enough. Oh man, well, we loved having you. We appreciate the plug, and be good. We'll stay in touch, and we'll certainly get you back on the podcast again.
Absolutely, let's do it.
Thanks a lot.
All right,
bye bye.